Welcome back to the deep dive. You know, when we decided to look at paranormal experiences for this deep dive, I was expecting some spooky stories, but wow, you guys really delivered.
Right. Some really interesting stuff here.
Yeah, I'm really eager to kind of dig into the details and see what we can uncover.
Absolutely. Let's see what patterns and insights we can glean from these reports.
Okay, so the first one here is takes place in a house built in 1890.
Okay.
And at first the homeowner thought, oh, it's an old house.
Huh.
I'm just hearing the typical creaks and groans,
Right.
the old house settling.
Yeah, makes sense.
Makes sense. But then things escalated.
Yeah, it's that escalation that's really interesting. If it was just random noises, that would be one thing, but it seems like a progression almost.
Yeah.
Like a series of events that are increasingly unsettling.
Yeah.
You mentioned like a child's scooter shooting across the floor,
Yeah.
footsteps on the stairs, an exhaust fan turning on by itself.
Oh, yeah, at full blast.
At full blast, it's almost like something is becoming bolder in its actions.
And it's not even just that, it's also the timing of it. A lot of these incidents seem to happen around December 22nd.
Mm.
The homeowner even mentioned a similar event a year prior, also on December 22nd.
That's really interesting.
Like, what is that about?
That date correlation really makes you wonder if there's some kind of cyclical nature to the activity.
Yeah.
Some researchers have theorized that certain dates or times of year could be more prone to paranormal events, perhaps due to historical events or even something like astrological alignments influencing these phenomena.
Wow. So we've got like a cosmic calendar happening here.
Yeah, it's a fascinating idea.
All right. So we've got this house built in the late 1800s and maybe some date-specific paranormal activity. Let's move on to our second story. This one takes place in the UK.
Okay.
And the homeowner in this case was already familiar with paranormal experiences.
Really?
They even mentioned frequently seeing apparitions. But even for someone who's used to the strange and unusual, these experiences were pretty intense.
Yeah, so they went from seeing apparitions to a child-sized footprint appearing in their hallway.
Yeah, and this is in a freshly carpeted hallway.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Like, how does that even happen?
Yeah, and the strangeness doesn't end there. It sounds like they experienced apparitions, a metal rack ripped off a radiator, the smell of sulfur, and even a whispering voice in their ear while they were in bed.
I mean, that's like a greatest hits of paranormal activity.
Yeah, it really is. And what makes this case so interesting is the sheer variety of phenomena reported.
No.
We have visual experiences like the apparitions and the footprint auditory phenomena, like the whispering and knocking olfactory phenomena with the sulfur smell.
Yeah.
And even what could be considered psychokinetic activity with the radiator incident.
Hold on, psychokinetic activity. I think some of our listeners might not be familiar with that term. Could you maybe break that down a bit?
Yeah, sure. Psychokinetic activity, or PK for short, is the alleged ability of the mind to directly influence matter without any physical contact.
Oh.
So it's like the idea that your thoughts alone could move objects or cause lights to flicker or even manipulate environmental conditions.
Okay, so in this case, the metal rack being ripped off the radiator could be an example of PK if something unseen was actually causing it to move.
Yeah, that's one way to interpret it.
Okay.
And what's really compelling about both of these cases is that both homeowners were very thorough in trying to debunk these experiences.
Yeah, they didn't just jump to conclusions.
No, they checked for intruders, they reviewed security footage, they considered environmental factors. They really wanted to rule out any conventional explanations before even considering the paranormal.
And in the UK case, they were very specific about saying they live in a small, secure home with cameras covering various angles.
Yeah, so it makes it even harder to explain away.
Right. It's not like there was someone lurking in the shadows or playing pranks. And they even mentioned hearing knocking on the front door, but their security cameras showed no one there.
That's strange.
It's as if whatever is causing this is choosing to interact with them specifically.
Almost like a private performance.
Exactly. It really makes you wonder if there's some truth to that old saying, a ghost is just a person you haven't met yet.
Yeah, maybe there is.
But why are they choosing to interact with us in the first place? What do they want?
That's a question that has fascinated researchers for centuries.
Yeah.
Are they trying to communicate? Are they seeking help? Or are they just messing with us?
I mean, could it be all of the above?
It's certainly possible.
I mean, the whispering voice, that kind of sounds like maybe an attempt at communication.
Yeah.
But then the scooter suddenly shooting across the floor. I mean, what's that about?
Yeah, it's hard to see any clear intent behind that.
It's that unpredictable nature that makes it so hard to draw any real conclusions.
Exactly. It
Yeah.
keeps us guessing
Yeah.
and keeps us fascinated.
And I think that's why I'm so drawn to these stories. They're like puzzles with missing pieces.
Hmm.
You can analyze, you can look for patterns, explore different theories,
Yeah.
but there's always that element of the unknown.
Right.
And I think that's what keeps us coming back for more.
I agree. There's something about these experiences that really taps into our deepest curiosity.
Yeah.
They remind us that despite all of our advancements in science and technology, there are still things we just don't understand.
Yeah, it is humbling in a way
It is.
to think that there might be forces at play that we haven't even begun to comprehend.
It certainly puts things into perspective,
Yeah.
and it reminds us to approach the unknown with humility and with an open mind.
Yeah.
Maybe someday we will have all the answers. But for now, we have the wonder, the speculation, and for some people, these very real and sometimes unsettling experiences.
You know, thinking back to that first story with the homeowner who mentioned wanting to be prepared for next December if those events happen again.
Right.
It's almost like they're viewing it as a recurring event that they need to learn to cope with.
That's a really interesting perspective. It suggests a shift from fear to acceptance,
Yeah.
even a sense of pragmatism in the face of the unknown. Instead of being paralyzed by fear, they're choosing to be proactive,
Yeah.
to prepare themselves for the possibility of future occurrences.
Which begs the question, what steps can one take to prepare for potential paranormal activity?
That's a tough question. I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all answer.
Yeah.
You know, some people might find comfort in spiritual practices or rituals, while others focus on the psychological and emotional aspects of these experiences. I think ultimately it's about finding what works best for the individual.
Yeah, makes sense. What might be comforting or empowering for one person
Right.
might be completely ineffective or even frightening for another.
Exactly. It's a very personal journey. But I think the key is to approach these experiences with a balanced perspective.
Yeah.
You know, acknowledge the fear and the uncertainty,
Uh-huh.
but also maintaining a sense of curiosity and a willingness to learn.
And perhaps most importantly, remember that even in the face of the unexplainable, we are not alone.
Yes.
There are others who have had similar experiences, and there are resources available to help us navigate these uncharted waters.
Absolutely. There's a whole community of people who are fascinated by the paranormal. And there are countless books, websites, organizations dedicated to researching and understanding these phenomena.
Yeah.
It's a testament to the enduring human fascination with the unknown.
It is, and it's also a reminder that even in the age of, technology and scientific advancement, there are still mysteries out there waiting to be explored.
For sure.
Now, you mentioned earlier that the homeowner in the UK was already familiar with paranormal experiences.
Right.
This brings up a question that has always fascinated me. Are some people simply more sensitive or receptive to these types of phenomena than others?
Yeah, it's like having a sixth sense.
Yeah.
That's a great question, and it's one that researchers have been pondering for a long time.
Yeah.
Some theories suggest that certain individuals might possess a heightened sensitivity to electromagnetic fields or other subtle energies that could be associated with paranormal activity.
So it's like some people are just wired differently,
It's a possibility.
and they're more attuned to these subtle energies.
Think of it like musical talent. Some people are just naturally gifted, able to hear and interpret music in ways that others can't.
Right.
Perhaps it's the same with paranormal sensitivity. Some individuals might have a natural predisposition to perceive things beyond the realm of the ordinary.
And in this case, the homeowner's partner also witnessed some of these apparitions.
Oh, wow.
So it wasn't just one person's imagination.
That's right. The corroboration from multiple witnesses definitely strengthens the account.
Right.
It suggests that these experiences were in some way objectively real, at least to the people who perceived them.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, I got to say, one of the details that really creeped me out was the whispering voice in the second story.
Yeah.
It's one thing to hear a disembodied voice, but to feel that something is right next to you whispering in your ear,
Yeah.
that's next level creepy.
It's definitely a very personal and potentially invasive type of experience.
Yeah.
It goes beyond simply seeing or hearing something.
Yeah.
It's almost like a violation of your personal space, a feeling of being truly intruded upon.
Yeah, and it makes you question the nature and the intentions of whatever might be behind it.
Exactly. Is it trying to communicate? To scare you?
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to say for sure.
So we've got this house built in the late 1800s with unexplained events potentially tied to a specific date.
Right.
And another home where we're seeing a variety of paranormal phenomena,
Uh-huh.
apparitions, physical interactions, a whispering voice. But what I find fascinating is that despite the fear and uncertainty,
Mhm.
both homeowners seem to be approaching these experiences with a mix of caution and curiosity.
You're right. It's like they're not just running away from the unknown, they're trying to understand it, even if it means confronting their fears and challenging their own beliefs.
It really speaks to the human desire to understand the world around us,
I think so.
even the parts that seem to defy logic and explanation.
Yeah. And in the first homeowner's case, they even talked about wanting to be prepared for next December. If these events do have a cyclical nature,
Right.
it's almost like they're viewing it as a recurring phenomenon that they need to learn to cope with.
It makes you wonder what steps you could take to prepare for that sort of thing.
Yeah. Would you try to ward it off, or would you try to find a way to coexist with it?
That's a great question.
I don't know if there's a right answer.
Yeah.
There are traditional methods like, house blessings or cleansing rituals,
Uh-huh.
but then there are also alternative approaches like energy healing or meditation.
Yeah.
I think ultimately it comes down to personal preference and what resonates with the individual.
Right. What might be comforting for one person could be terrifying for another.
Exactly. It's a very personal journey.
But I think it's important to remember that even when you're faced with something you can't explain, you're not alone.
Absolutely.
There's a whole community of people who have had similar experiences, and there are resources available to help you navigate those experiences.
That's so important. It's reassuring to know that there are others out there who understand what you're going through.
And those resources can provide valuable information and support.
Definitely. They can help validate your experiences, connect you with others, and provide guidance on how to cope and move forward.
And it's a reminder that even in the face of the unexplainable, connection and understanding can make all the difference.
I couldn't agree more.
And, it brings us back to the idea that even though these experiences can be scary and unsettling,
Right.
they can also be a catalyst for growth and self-discovery.
It's like they force us to confront the unknown.
Yeah.
And sometimes that confrontation can lead to unexpected insights and a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world around us.
Yeah. It's like a reminder that there's more to life than what we can see and touch, and that sometimes the most profound truths are hidden in the shadows.
Beautifully put.
And it ties in so nicely to what we've been talking about, that sense of wonder and curiosity that draws us to the paranormal.
Right.
These experiences can shake us to our core, but they can also awaken a sense of awe and remind us of the vastness of the universe and the mysteries it holds.
It's like a cosmic wake-up call, reminding us that there's still so much we don't know.
And sometimes not knowing can be the most exhilarating part of the journey.
Definitely.
It's amazing how we've gone from discussing these specific events in these haunted homes to this much broader conversation about the implications of paranormal experiences.
I love that. It's like we've zoomed out to see the bigger picture.
Exactly. So where do we go from here? What are some key takeaways for our listeners? What should they be thinking about as we wrap up this part of our deep dive?
I think one of the biggest takeaways is that paranormal experiences, while often shrouded in fear and mystery, can also be opportunities for growth, self-discovery, and even a deeper connection to something beyond ourselves.
I like that. It's not just about being scared. It's about the potential for transformation and understanding.
Exactly. And another important takeaway is that even if you haven't personally experienced something paranormal, it's crucial to approach these topics with an open mind. And a willingness to listen to those who have.
Right. It's about respecting people's experiences, even if they don't align with our own beliefs or understanding of the world.
Absolutely. And finally, I think it's important to remember that the paranormal is still a realm of great mystery.
Yeah.
We have theories, we have stories, but we don't have all the answers. And honestly, that's okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes the most rewarding journeys are the ones that leave us with more questions than answers.
Well said. And on that note, I think we're ready to move on to the final part of our deep dive, where we'll delve into some of the most intriguing questions raised by these stories.
Sounds good. I'm ready when you are. Yeah, it really makes you think, doesn't it? I mean, these aren't just stories about spooky sounds or fleeting shadows.
Right.
These are physical events that can have a real impact on people's lives.
Yeah, it really hits home when you hear about these things happening in ordinary places like our own houses.
Yeah.
And in both these cases, the homeowners really went out of their way to make sure they weren't imagining things.
Right.
They checked for intruders, reviewed security footage, considered environmental factors. They did their due diligence.
And that just makes it even more mysterious, especially in the UK case. They were very specific about saying they live in a secure home, no hidden spaces, no way for someone to sneak in.
Yeah, and they even had security cameras.
Right. It's not like someone was hiding in the attic or something.
And remember they mentioned hearing knocking on the front door,
Huh.
but the cameras didn't show anyone there.
That's so weird. It's as if whatever's causing these things is deliberately making itself known, but only to the people inside the house.
It's like a private performance just for them.
Exactly. It's like they're saying, hey, we're here, but only you can see us.
It makes you wonder if there's some truth to that old saying, a ghost is just a person you haven't met yet.
Yeah, maybe there is. But if that's the case, why are they choosing to interact with us? What do they want?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's one that's been pondered for centuries.
Right. Are they trying to communicate with us? Warn us about something? Or are they just observing us?
Or maybe even playing a role in our lives that we don't fully understand.
That's a fascinating thought. It's like we're trying to decipher the motives of another species.
Yeah, we have to be careful not to project our own assumptions and biases onto them.
Absolutely. Our understanding of consciousness and intelligence might be incredibly limited. What if these entities operate on a completely different plane of existence?
With motivations that are beyond our comprehension. It's mind-boggling.
It really is, but it's also kind of exciting, isn't it?
It is. It opens up a whole new realm of possibilities.
Right. It forces us to expand our definition of what's possible, to consider perspectives that are radically different from our own.
Okay, so we've talked about intent, but then there's also the question of what these entities actually are.
Right. Are we talking about spirits of the deceased? Interdimensional beings? Or something else entirely?
Something we haven't even imagined yet.
There are so many theories out there, and each one has its own strengths and weaknesses.
Like the spirit hypothesis.
Yeah, the idea that these entities are the disembodied consciousnesses of people who have passed away.
Which is a comforting thought for some people.
Right, the idea that our loved ones might still be around in some form.
But then there's also the interdimensional hypothesis.
Right, the idea that these entities are beings from other dimensions.
That one's a bit more sci-fi.
It is, but it would explain why these entities often seem to defy the laws of physics as we understand them.
And then there are even more fringe theories.
Oh, yeah, like the idea that these entities could be time travelers.
Time traveler.
Or even projections of our own subconscious minds.
It's a lot to take in.
It really is, and honestly, we might never have definitive answers. But I think that's part of the allure of the paranormal.
I agree. It keeps us guessing. It keeps us exploring. It keeps us pushing the boundaries of what we think we know.
Exactly. And it reminds us that there's still so much about the universe that we don't understand.
And that even in the age of science and technology, we're still surrounded by mystery.
And that's a good thing. You know, it keeps us humble. It keeps us curious.
I like that. So what do you think? Where do we go from here? What are some key takeaways for our listeners as we wrap up this part of our deep dive?
Well, I think one of the most important things to remember is that paranormal experiences, even though they're often scary and mysterious, can also be opportunities for growth.
Okay.
Self-discovery, and even a deeper connection to something beyond ourselves.
I like that. It's not just about the scares, it's about the potential for transformation.
Exactly. And another important takeaway is that even if you haven't personally experienced something paranormal, it's crucial to approach these topics with an open mind.
Right.
And listen to those who have. These are real experiences for the people who have them.
And we should respect that even if it doesn't align with our own beliefs or worldview.
Absolutely. And finally, I think it's important to remember that the paranormal is still a realm of great mystery.
Yeah.
You know, we have theories, we have stories, but we don't have all the answers.
And maybe we never will.
Maybe not. But that's okay. Sometimes the most rewarding journeys are the ones that leave us with more questions than answers.
Well said. And on that note, I think we're ready to move on to the final part of our deep dive,
Okay.
where we'll try to tackle some of those really big questions that these stories have raised.
Sound good. I'm ready for it.
All right, so we've talked about what might be causing these experiences. We've talked about the potential for psychic sensitivity, but let's kind of shift gears for a sec and think about the people who are actually having these experiences and like, what kind of lasting impact does this have? You know, it's one thing to hear a spooky story,
Right.
but it's another thing entirely to live it.
Absolutely. These experiences can be incredibly unsettling, even life-changing for some people.
Yeah?
You know, imagine living in a house where you constantly feel like you're being watched, where you never know what might happen next. That can really take a toll on your well-being.
Yeah, it sounds exhausting to live with that kind of uncertainty. And I imagine
Yeah.
it's not something that you can just casually talk about with other people.
Right. There's still a lot of stigma around paranormal beliefs. People might think you're crazy, you're making things up. So you're dealing with these unsettling events.
Right.
And then you're also dealing with the pressure to keep it all to yourself.
It's like a double whammy.
Exactly. It can be very isolating.
And low.
Very lonely. That's why it's so important to have safe spaces where people can share their experiences without fear of judgment.
You know, it's interesting when we were talking about that homeowner in the first story who wants to be prepared for next December.
Right.
They seem to be taking a very, proactive approach.
Yeah.
Almost like they're expecting these things to happen again.
It's fascinating how they've shifted from fear to acceptance.
Yeah.
Almost a sense of pragmatism.
And it makes you wonder what steps you could take to prepare for that sort of thing.
Right. Would you try to protect yourself from it? Or would you try to find a way to coexist with it?
It's a really interesting question.
I don't think there's an easy answer.
No.
There are those traditional methods like, house blessings and cleansing rituals. But then there are more alternative approaches like energy healing and meditation.
Right.
I think ultimately it comes down to what resonates with the individual.
Makes sense. And I think, regardless of how someone chooses to approach it, it's just so important to remember that they're not alone.
Yeah.
There is a whole community of people who have had similar experiences. And there are resources available
Absolutely.
to help people navigate these kinds of things.
It's so reassuring to know that you're not the only one going through this.
Yeah.
And that there are people out there who understand and can offer support.
And those resources can provide valuable information and guidance.
Definitely.
Yeah.
They can help you make sense of what's happening,
Yeah.
connect you with others, and give you tools to cope.
And I think it kind of brings us back to that idea that even though these experiences can be really scary and unsettling,
Right?
they can also be a catalyst for growth and self-discovery.
Yeah, it's like they force you to confront the unknown.
Yeah.
And sometimes that confrontation can lead to incredible insights about yourself and the world around you.
So maybe it's not always about getting rid of the paranormal activity, but more about learning to live with it, to understand it, and maybe even to grow from it.
I think there's a lot of wisdom in that approach.
Now, we were talking earlier about how the homeowner in the UK frequently sees apparitions.
Right.
I'm curious, do you think there's a connection between that and some of these other phenomena, like the psychokinetic activity?
That's a great question, and one that's really hard to answer definitively. Some theories suggest that people who are sensitive to subtle energies might be more prone to experiencing a wider range of paranormal phenomena, including apparitions. So it's possible that it's not just a standalone experience,
Right.
but a sign of a deeper sensitivity.
Like they're tuned into a different frequency.
Exactly. But of course, we're still very much in the realm of speculation here.
Yeah, for sure. So, okay, if these entities or whatever is causing these phenomena are really aware and they're interacting with us,
Right?
what's their motivation? What are they trying to do?
The million-dollar question. Are they trying to communicate? Are they trying to warn us? Or are they simply observing us?
Maybe playing a role in our lives that we don't even understand.
It's like we're trying to understand the motives of another species.
Yeah, and we have to be careful not to project our own assumptions onto them.
Absolutely. Our human understanding of things like consciousness and intelligence might be very limited.
Yeah.
What if these entities operate on a completely different plane of existence?
Yeah, with motivations that we can't even comprehend. It's mind-blowing to even think about.
It really is. But it's also exciting because it opens up so many possibilities.
It challenges us to expand our definition of what's possible.
Definitely.
Okay, so we've talked about intent, but then there's the question of what these entities actually are.
Yeah, are we talking about spirits, interdimensional beings, something else entirely?
I mean, there's so many theories out there.
There really are, and
Yeah.
each one is more fascinating than the last.
Like, what about the spirit hypothesis?
Right, the idea that these entities are the disembodied consciousnesses of people who have passed on.
Which is a comforting thought for some.
It is. It aligns with many cultural and religious beliefs about the afterlife.
Yeah, but then there's also that interdimensional hypothesis.
Right, the idea that these entities are beings from other dimensions who can somehow cross over into our reality.
And that one's a little more sci-fi.
It is, but it would explain some of the things we see, like how these entities sometimes seem to defy our understanding of physics.
And then there are even those more fringe theories.
Right,
Yeah.
like the idea that they could be time travelers.
Or even projections of our own minds.
It's really a lot to wrap your head around.
It is. And honestly, we might never have definitive answers.
Probably not. But
Okay.
that's part of what makes the paranormal so compelling. It keeps us curious. It keeps us exploring. And it keeps us pushing the boundaries of what we think we know.
Well, I think that's a perfect note to end on.
Yep.
We've talked about these specific events in these haunted houses.
Right.
We've talked about psychic sensitivity. We've talked about some of the really big questions that these stories raise.
We've covered a lot of ground.
And while we might not have all the answers, I think we've come away with a deeper appreciation for the mysteries that surround us.
I agree. And I hope our listeners feel empowered to continue their own exploration of these fascinating topics.
Absolutely. There are tons of resources out there for anyone who wants to learn more.
Books, websites, podcasts.
The possibilities are endless. Just keep an open mind, stay curious, and who knows what you might discover.
Exactly. And most importantly, don't be afraid to embrace the mystery. Sometimes the most rewarding journeys are the ones that lead us into the unknown.
Beautifully said. So until next time, keep exploring.